Hello, everybody. It's Codiak here, and welcome back to another Sunday speculation stream talking about Hytale. Every Sunday, we come to you. We talk about topics like PvE, PvP, creation, all sorts of things. And today, I'm really excited because I have Matt from Aderan Gaming joining me. Matt, what's going on, man?
Hey, Codiak, how's it going, man?
Good. So, Matt, you are a PvP guru. You know everything there is to know about PvP. Right?
Sure.
That's what I hear.
We'll put it that way.
We'll put it that way. So you come from a Minecraft background. You come from a mini game background. So tell everybody who you are, what you do on your channel, and just let's get it kicking.
Sure. So you can call me Aderan, you can call me Matt. Usually my content nowadays is live streaming, and I do anything from survival, Minecraft, to Hypixel minigames, and recently we've also started doing Splatoon and some other games on my channel, but for the most part, this is all in preparation for Hytale's release. When I originally did some videos and speculation and stuff, everybody's pumped about Hytale. That's the direction that we're moving. And so the really important thing about our conversation today is that I feel like the PvP portion of Hytale is the most important part that they haven't given us much information on. And so this discussion is really going to kind of help us flesh things out, because as we move towards Hytale's release, obviously Hypixel Studios, like, the most popular thing that came out of Hypixel was the server itself. That's what people are interested in for Hytale, so I'm excited to see what we got.
So let's talk about your background with the mini games in Minecraft and in Hypixel. Where did you start out? How long have you been doing the mini game scene? And talk a little bit about how that's evolved over the past few years.
So really I've only started doing PvP mini games since last year. And it was kind of something that grew on my channel pretty slowly. And I was originally just doing Hytale speculation videos, and then slowly people started saying, well, hey, if you're gonna, this was actually me, I said to myself, well, hey, if I'm gonna do Hytale minigames, or I'm gonna do Hytale discussion videos, I need to get started on the PvP side of things with Hypixel Studios, because that's originally where this whole thing began, right? So I started doing a couple of Hypixel games and like live streams, and slowly that's where my channel grew from there. Eventually I went out and I had some people who came in and played with me for Hypixel minigames, and slowly that's where my community started building from. And the majority of the people that I have on my channel now are because of those Hypixel minigame streams that I started. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm going to continue that as we head into kind of Hytale's release and hopefully their minigames as well.
All right, so for somebody like me, I'm not a huge Minecrafter. I think pretty much everybody knows that at this point. For somebody who understands what PvP is, but doesn't necessarily understand how it translates into like a Minecraft universe, what are some of the games and some of the things that have kind of cemented Hypixel as like this is the place to go for PvP mini games?
I think the biggest thing for them is their Bed Wars, Sky Wars. That's the core of their player versus player scenario, and they've got UHC, which is kind of their champions. It's more of like they've got a league structure around it too. I don't think they could ever expand it into like an esports type thing, but they have the direction of that's the core function. When you go on to Hypixel, like that is those games of Bed Wars, Sky Wars, those are the ones that people come to do kind of the upper level play. Now, beyond that, Hypixel as a server has smaller mini games that are more fun related, like murder mystery and mega walls and that kind of thing. But for the most part, if you see anybody online doing, if they're grinding out ranks, they're grinding it out on those Bed Wars, Sky Wars games. And so that's kind of the core function of the core games in Hypixel.
Now, I don't know if you have the stream pulled up, so I'm just looking at Hypixel's website, right? This is they still have a team working in Minecraft, right? This is a different team that's working in Hytale, but over the years, I mean, you mentioned Bed Wars and Sky Wars, which are the first two on the list. They've got Murder Mystery, which you also mentioned. They've got arcade games. They've got UHC Champion, which you've already mentioned. Arena Brawl, Build Battle, Cops and Crime, Crazy Walls. I mean, the list goes on and on. So this has been something that the team has been developing for a long time. So you would safely assume these guys know what they're talking about when it comes to PvP.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, that's where they got the majority of their fan base to begin with. When Hypixel made all these mini games and they've got all these people on board as far as player counts, and then they drop Hytale as like, hey, here's what our other team is doing. From my impression, this is where most of the fan base is coming from for Hytale. And so the fact that all of the Hytale information that we've received so far has only been mostly survival and mostly creative. I mentioned this in a video of mine a while back. I said we need, once we see a drop, whether it's a blog post or a trailer or something like that, once we see a drop of new information from Hytale talking about their PvP side of things, I think that's when we can expect a release date somewhat in the near future, and B, that's gonna interest the majority of the fan base, if I could put it that way. I know there's a lot of people who are interested in making mods for the mini games, and you've seen, I mean, you're showing one right now, the Cops and Crims part. Like, you can create these kinds of first-person shooter situations and first-person mods. They managed to do something similar in Minecraft, which is a feat in itself, but Hytale has a completely new system that will allow you to create these kinds of things with full models and everything else. So because of that, I think once we get some more information about the PvP side of things, like, this is going to be a huge portion of what Hytale is going to be, I think.
Right. And you made a really good point, and something that I think kind of escaped my mind going through all of our videos that we've done. You know, they've been doing PvP content for years. So if they wanted to drop blog post after blog post about PvP, they could have very easily. And you brought up the point that, you know, maybe as they get really close, that's when they start to drop that stuff, because that's where their big fan base is, right? So it's kind of like they're, hey, start paying attention because we're getting ready to do this over here in Hytale.
Right. And I think back in the day, goodness, back a couple months ago, back in my day, I'm talking about a couple months ago when they released one of their first FAQs. I think one of the top questions on their FAQs was, you know, well, what about the PvP? And I'm pretty sure, can you tell us more about PvP? If on the FAQ of December 13th, at the bottom of their general section, they say, can you tell us more about it? And they said, like, we wanted to touch on a little bit, but we understand that the PvP community is going to hold us to very high standards, and we want to make sure that if you had the opportunity, we wanted to make sure that this is all fleshed out before we actually reveal it. As you probably, I'll explain. Hypixel had an interesting scenario where, with the drop of update 1.10 for Minecraft, they changed the PvP system. And now, and in the past, before that, the clicking system was completely open, where you could rapid fire click and that was the damage done. Past that, then it was on a cooldown. And that completely split the PvP thing, because now you've got half the community playing with the old update because they want the fast clicking experience. Then you've got half the community playing with the cooldown clicking system.
Right.
And I think that's a great example of where Hytale the studio looked at the past and they said, okay, Minecraft made this decision to split things. They didn't split it, but the community got split. We don't want our community to be split once we release our game in Hytale. Like, we want to make sure that we've got these PvP elements nailed down before we actually release it, which I totally understand from their part.
Right. And now they're going to be in control. That's the thing, right?
Correct.
So they were, you know, they were in control in their Hypixel server, obviously, but they're still bound by the limitations of what Minecraft is. Now they're basically saying, no, we're taking control. We're building our own thing, giving a lot of the tools to the players. I mean, they're trying to win over massive groups of players, just different types of groups of people. From just the people that follow the Game Gurus, there may be a large chunk of them that will never even consider playing a PvP minigame because that's just not their thing. So they have to focus on these pillars, right? We've seen throughout all of their presentation, all their marketing stuff, that they have these pillars, right? And so one of those pillars that they have been very silent about is the minigames PvP aspect, which is easily that's their wheelhouse. That's their bread and butter.
Their bread and butter.
That is that is when people think of Hypixel, they think of PvP.
That's exactly what their mind goes to.
Right. So let's transition over into Hytale. What, as somebody who is very familiar with the Hypixel structure, the games, the things that they offer, what do you think they're going to offer in Hytale?
So in terms of their PvP side of things, I think we can kind of expect to see some of the same mini games, because they are going to want to bring over the favorites.
Right, and they've confirmed that they are.
Yep. And so I think with that, they're also going to have their competitive structure. I know that there is there's star systems and there's ranking systems in the current mini games, and like Sky Wars, Bed Wars, they have ranks. So I think that's one of the reasons that people stick around playing these mini games, even on Hypixel right now, is because they're grinding up those ranks, right? So they're going to have, I'm sure they're going to have those rank systems, and who knows if that could translate into rewards. Like obviously Hypixel as the server has so many things that you can usually get from purchasing not just ranks that you earn within the game, but ranks that you can purchase like MVP plus, VIP, and you get these like cosmetic item perks. So I'm sure that Hytale could maybe introduce these cosmetic prizes that you might get from earning certain ranks in the mini games. But then I also foresee them obviously including their regular like fun mini games to keep, because not everybody's interested in like player versus player hardcore PvP experience. Well, but they're interested in those things.
Yeah, let's break that down really quick, because one of the things that when the Hytale hype was at its absolute peak, kind of earlier in the year, one of the big things that came up was, you know, the payment model. And I don't want to dive into that because that's not what this stream is about. But in terms of the mini game content, you know, you mentioned the competitive stuff. Why should people keep playing it? This is a fresh start for them, right? They can implement whatever system they want. In your opinion, and this could be, you know, a straight hot take, what system do you think would work best to appease a competitive community and a casual community?
As far as Hytale goes?
As far as like an in-game reward system to keep people playing. You mentioned kind of a star system, a rank system. Is that the right way to go, or do you think they should start looking at a different method, maybe something that they haven't tried before, or another standard from other, you know, competitive games?
Interesting. So I think one of the other things that keeps people invested in playing a game over a long period of time is kind of like completionists and unlocks and achievements, that kind of thing. So if, say, you've got different categories of mini games like the hardcore PvP that we mentioned, Sky Wars, Bed Wars, you've also got creative mini games like Build Battle. You've also got kind of for fun arcade mini games like Murder Mystery and Mega Walls, that kind of thing. So say you had unlockable cosmetics or unlockable ranks or rewards in each category. There are some people who I'm sure would want to kind of collect them all, kind of thing, you know, each set sold separately, collect them all. And so you're going to go into each minigame category and kind of grind those up. And of course, you could also have different levels in each one where people want to be the best at Sky Wars or Bed Wars. And if you're on the Hypixel website right now, they've also got leaderboards. And, you know, for some people, being on the top of the leaderboard or getting a higher rank or status in Hypixel itself is very important to them. I'm sure the same thing would translate over to Hytale as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the PvP nature is competitive. It's very rarely a casual thing. Now, it's hard. You mentioned the splitting of you know, kind of the combat kind of split the community, and obviously that was an external force that the Hypixel team really didn't have much control over. But in terms of creating a competitive scene, creating a casual scene, you know, there's a lot of different ways they could do that, you know. But of course, every single, you know, if they wanted to create, like, this is a top tier, like Apex, is it Apex Legend that's doing it? Yeah, Apex Legend, who's doing this, like, if you've ranked in the top 5, you have access to a new tier, right? And that happens with MMRs all the time. But then you run into the problem of smurfing, right? People making new accounts or starting over. So I don't know if anybody has ever really nailed it on the head in terms of how to create a perfect competitive structure. And then going back to your cosmetic items, and this is just my hot take, and I'll stand by this. I don't know any single game that has ever done some sort of PvP where ranks equaled gameplay enhancers. I'm a huge I'm a huge opponent of doing anything, being able to purchase anything, whether it be with ranks, stars, real money that give you an advantage over somebody else. Like, for instance, I recently got into Star Wars Battlefront 2, or whatever it's called, the new one, Star Wars Battlefront. So
love it.
the newest iteration of it, or the most recent updated iteration of it, I find very fun. But within the game itself, there are gameplay boosters,
straight up enhancers
based on, now that's strictly based on how much you play that class or that vehicle, right? So like I do the star battles. So you know, my fighter is pretty good, but my interceptor is trash, and I will get absolutely murdered by anybody else that has those gameplay advantages just because they've played longer.
Right.
And I never like that because it doesn't feel like you're on an even footing.
Yeah. And the same thing is going on. The same thing even happens within Hypixel itself. You've got Skywars, where Skywars you can have kits, right? And these kits either require coins that you've collected from playtime or rolls that you've earned from like chests and loot boxes and stuff. And one of the interesting things is that I see it in my community when I play. When I've got a dozen people, right? Half the people have been playing Hypixel for years, and they have these awesome kits. They've got Ender Knight chest thing kit, whatever, that makes them like very powerful. Then I've got the other 6, the other part of my group who they've never played Hypixel before, but they're joining me today. Right. And it's like, well, they're starting with basic kit 1 and they have a sword and that's it. And so the 6 are like, oh yeah, let's go play Skywars. I've got this awesome kit. And then the other half are like, nah, like I don't want to do this because I'm just gonna get crushed.
And that's already a fracturing of your community there, just from that perspective.
Yep, it's already present. And so Hytale has an opportunity to kind of decide what to do. I think they've seen a lot of success with that model because the only way to get those kits is by grinding and playing it out. And so there's a group of players, there's a population who is going to want to spend the time to grind up and get those kits because they're doing it with the investment in the future of getting that awesome kit. Some players that's going to be super appealing. Some people, like I've had, they're not too excited about doing that. So like you said, there's not really a perfect system, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what Hytale decides because I think they've seen success in both models.
Right. All right, so let's quickly talk about, just because Lego, who's part of our community, brought it up in the chat here, let's talk about cheating. Sure. Have you seen or experienced cheating in the Hypixel Minecraft servers?
Oh, absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that and how, one, obviously we all know that cheating sucks and cheating ruins the experience. Talk about some of the situations you've run into, and you can keep it broad if you want to.
Sure.
And what Hytale needs to do moving forward into their game to address some of those issues.
So the cheating that I've seen is mostly people who are using modified clients or they're using extensions by some means to either extend the reach of their swing, or I've even seen things as blatant as literally flying.
Oh God! When everybody else is running.
Yeah, everybody's running. I've been on stream. I have watched a guy in a capture the flag game mode fly up, go over to the other base, pick up the flag, fly back, and finish the game.
And that's no fun for anybody.
Everybody just watches by as the flag floats away in the clouds. Like this. Right. So I've seen a lot of it. But the thing is, because this is coming from most of the time modified clients and whatnot, Hypixel does have its own sort of watchdog kind of anti-cheat system that does ban people, especially after they get reported. So these things do happen. But like you said, smurfing, right?
Right.
Because you can create a new account for the most part, like it's pretty simple to come back in. Now, Minecraft is a paid game, and this is a whole nother discussion, but we're fairly certain that Hytale is going to be paid as well. Right. But partly for that reason, because if it was not paid, you'd be able to create just infinite, free accounts, and that would exacerbate, that'd be a big problem. That would make it would expedite and make a huge problem for Hytale because they wouldn't be able to keep track of all these new accounts being made.
Right.
And the other part about it is, I think Hytale has a much less likely chance of being hacked, modified, etc., because for the exact reason of them keeping the client locked. Minecraft's client is open because you can do mods and obviously a lot of the mods that we've seen have been fantastic. You've seen all sorts of different survival and games being created out of it, but one of the important parts of Hytale deciding to make their C# client closed is that now it's very, very difficult to create a modified client and have those hacks that we've seen pretty prevalently on the Minecraft side of things.
So that's already a big step towards curtailing some of the issues that you've run into.
Right, is closing off that client. And also, to Hypixel's credit, I think because they have so much experience in keeping off hackers from their Hypixel studio games or Hypixel server, I'm pretty sure that experience is going to translate over into not only how they design Hytale from the upfront side of things, but how they also manage and regulate it once the game actually releases.
Right. And it's, over the past, let's say 6 months, we've obviously seen the traction of Hytale has been astronomical. So I think the team is dealing with a myriad of issues in terms of, making sure their adventure mode is sound. They have great ambitions with that, making sure that their systems for mini games and PvP are sound. But that also includes making sure that they have the staff, right? And making sure they have the systems in place to be able to regulate all this stuff, right? Because if you understaff or you under prepare and then you're overwhelmed with how good the response is, well, you're in really bad shape right out of the gate. And obviously it's a money play if you overstaff and over prepare and then only 10 people play the game. I don't think that's going to be the problem, and I think they are also, I think all of us are pretty confident that Hytale will do just fine when it comes out.
Absolutely.
But they have a lot of balls in the air, right? And so, we've talked about already, we've seen a lot of adventure mode, and I say a lot, I mean like probably 10% of adventure mode, maybe if we're lucky. We've seen a little bit of the creation stuff, and we've seen next to no minigame stuff. We've seen a few images, right? We've seen images that look like, I believe this is Skywars that I have up right here, kind of the islands, and they've already confirmed that their big ones are moving over, Bed Wars, Skywars.
Correct.
So moving beyond that, right? Obviously they have their classics, but and putting cheating and all that stuff in the rearview mirror for a second, they have a big opportunity here, right? New creative tools, a fresh slate to create new mini games. Where do you think they're going to come down on that? You think they're going to come out with 20 of them, or you think they're going to start with their staples and slowly build?
I think they're going to want to, and they should start with their staples and grow out from there, because it's going to be questionable of how the community is going to kind of branch out once Hytale hits. I think obviously you're going to have the core that enjoys the PvP like we talked about, but the advantage that Hytale has of being able to be in entire control of their client, as opposed to where it was in Minecraft, where they kind of had to obey Minecraft's restrictions, right? They have a lot of different directions they could go with the Hytale mini games. And so one of the other cool things is that, let's be honest, they may not have to branch out at all. If they put their staples in, keep in mind that there are whole communities being developed right now that are excited, and they're working toward building their own Hytale mini games. And so I think Hytale could kind of take a step back from the gas pedal, and they could put in their staples and then see, well, where's the community shifting? We've seen people excited about making Hytale mods that are first-person shooters like Call of Duty. We've seen mods that are things like World of Warcraft, so big MMO type style things. Obviously, you can do like top-down shooters as well, like we saw in the trailer. So there's a lot of different ways it could go, and I think it would be advantageous of Hytale to kind of see where the community goes before they start investing in like making other mini games. The other part of this is that it's not all that difficult for them either. I can't remember exactly where I heard this, but either it was Simon or somebody mentioned, listen, Bed Wars or Skywars or whatever it was literally just like a crapshoot idea that somebody came up with at a coffee table one day. And they were just like, hey, this sounds pretty cool, let's try it. And all of a sudden it becomes one of their most popular mini games ever. So they developed it in like less than a month and they put it out there. So that is to say, once they figure out where that direction is going, I think it's very easy for them to adapt and kind of shift the direction as they need to.
This is a very classic case of you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? They have a new platform, a new, hopefully massively successful place where they can showcase new games and stuff, and they can do that over time, right? From a marketing standpoint, you don't want to shove everything in right off the bat, because there is a fatigue that comes with, putting too much new stuff out there, right? You can't focus on one thing. So if you just come out of the gate saying, look, we know that mini games are really important to you guys. We heard you. We're bringing over the classics, the classic 5, say, the big 5. That way, 2 months later, they already have something in the works from their, from the Hypixel Minecraft server. They bring it over, boom, you get a new resurgence of hype, a little bit of a marketing angle to it. So they don't need to really pack the game with a ton of mini game content, because they can, I mean, they're masters at this. They are the best at it. So they can quickly turn around games. It probably doesn't take that much, and I don't know because I'm not a developer. I don't create this way, but I would imagine that they can relatively quickly turn around a game like Bed Wars and make it in Hytale.
And they don't want to spread their player base too thin either.
Right.
That's going to be the other difficulty.
Right. They don't want to come out with 20 games and then suddenly you only have 20 people here, 20 people here, you know, and 15 people here. They want to try and pump up I don't want to say artificially pump up the numbers, but they want to keep things focused. One, so that their team can really make sure everything goes off without a hitch. To deal with any cheating or any sort of systems issues, because the more games you put in there, the more you have to monitor, right?
Exactly. And you also made a good point in terms of the staff that we talked about as well. I think in a totally different vein of the discussion, they are one of the reasons that this release is so late, at least in my opinion, is because they didn't expect this amount of interest, right? They didn't expect this many people, to be excited for this game. And so now they're like, okay, well, if we have X amount of people interested, i.e. millions, you know,
tens of millions.
Yes, exactly. Now we need to like upscale our staff, upscale our servers, upscale everything else. And so I think kind of that staff balance that you mentioned, I think is going to be important, not only in how they design the game, but also to bring that into the conversation we just mentioned, how they decide like which mini games to bring on, which ones to do, that kind of thing. So I think right now they're in a really good spot. And I'd be kind of curious to see how they decide to move forward with which mini games they implement. And keep in mind, the other part of this is that when they release adventure mode and survival mode, obviously those are huge facets of something in Minecraft where survival is a huge portion, right? And so going out of the gate, as long as they have their staple mini games, I think people will be more than happy to play the adventure mode, the survival mode. They're going to be busy with those. Meanwhile, that gives Hytale a little bit of a pocket time to figure out, okay, well, where does our PvP community want to move while everybody's kind of also busy with adventure mode?
Right. I think the game, you know, unfortunately, and it's not a bad thing. I say unfortunately, it's not a bad thing. The game will be siloed. There will be people that are purely into it for adventure mode. There are people that will purely be into it for creative purposes. And then there will purely be people interested in it for PvP. And I don't think that's something that you can really, affect. Like that's people are just interested in what they're interested in. But how are they going to get people, say from a marketing standpoint or from a okay, you're the expert on the stream right now. How would you try and get somebody, say somebody like me who hasn't ever done any Minecraft mini games or PvP? How would you try and get me, who's stuck over here in adventure mode? How would you try and get me over to check out a mini game?
I think you might. You could. Oh gosh, there's a lot of different directions you could go with it. I think looking at my experience, like I used to be purely like survival and creative, but the reason that I came over to mini games was that my friends were talking about it, my friends were interested in it, and then also partly because Hytale was being released and Hypixel Studios was so popular, that's what brought me over. And so I can kind of see the same thing happening with Hytale, where if you've got a buzz about the PvP community, say you've got one of the interesting things that other games do is if you finish the campaign or the adventure mode of a story, you'll have an item or you'll have a cosmetic or you'll have something to that degree that you can also use in multiplayer. And so one of the drives to not only bring we'll use siloed PvP players into the adventure mode is, hey, you can get this item or you can get this perk by playing the campaign, and vice versa. People who played the game, well, now you can use that in multiplayer if you want. And so I think if they kind of combine those systems that interweave both of them, whether it's cosmetic, whether it's rank, whether it's like a new experience, say you have a side quest in the adventure mode that you can only play or you can only unlock per se if you played something in the multiplayer. A great example of this is the portals, right? Hytale mentioned something about the portals where you can literally kind of bounce between worlds within the Hytale adventure mode. And so say there was a side quest that's only available if you've played multiplayer PvP or a mini game, let's put it there, that might drive an interest for players who only might play the campaign to actually try some PvP and kind of bring people over.
Yeah, because getting players to go from mini games to single player, there's no real benefit for the company there, right? Because their single player numbers, while they could tout those as a a marketing success, what they really want is to be able to build up their PvP community. So they really need to get people from the single player world over into the multiplayer world to be successful. To say we have 10,000 people, I don't know what the number is going to end up being, but 10,000 people playing Bed Wars every single day. You know what I mean? And that would be a success for them.
Yeah. And that's where you also keep players too. People don't necessarily grind out the campaign. People grind out in the multiplayer, right?
Right. And there's an addicting element to it, right? If the gameplay is good, if the actual concept of the mini game is good, people stick around, they play multiple rounds, right? It's just like any other social media service or anything that we think of. Their goal is to try and keep you in it as long as possible. That's why, YouTube switched to an algorithm that favors longer videos. They want you to stay on their platform as long as possible. And that's the same thing for companies like Hytale that are trying to keep you in that mini game as long as possible. Hey, instant queue up for the next one. Boom, done. You're in it. You don't have to change anything. Show you the leaderboard, allow you to change your loadouts. Boom, go into the next one.
Yep.
And then 6 hours later, you're ready for bed.
Yep. Even though you wanted to go to bed 3 hours ago.
Exactly.
It's like, oh man. I think one of the other ways that they could increase players sticking around is we talked. I kind of brought up the point of having a reward at the end of the campaign. Right. You could turn that into not just one reward, but different pathways. Say you do the campaign as a knight, or as a ranger, or as a mage, or as something else. You could now start to not only increase the play time in the campaign, but say those things transferred over into multiplayer. Now you've got players who, if they only played the campaign and they had nothing, they may not be interested in going into multiplayer at all. But now if you say, okay, well, you finished the campaign in 3 different ways, now you have 3 different items going into multiplayer, they may be less worried because, well, now I've got 3 new kits that I can use. It's not as drastic of a challenge to approach the PvP community.
Right. And that is a way to alleviate kind of that equal footing we talked about before. But in that scenario you just kind of talked about, we're already talking about a kit system where you have been grinding out for months and you're up here and I'm just, maybe they're getting me to level 2, say, in my kit, and you're at level 7. That's going to turn off those new people, right? And obviously,
and this is,
go ahead.
Yeah, this is all speculating that,
of course,
they may not even have the kit system. Who knows?
Who knows? We don't know. That's why it's a Sunday stream. We can talk about whatever the heck we want to talk about. All right. So what is, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. Maybe you do. Matchmaking rating, MMR, as it's often called. Is there any sort of MMR system currently in Hypixel Minecraft? How does, Aderan Gaming and the Game Gurus want to get together, they want to do their thing, but they queue up individually? Is there a chance, if you're up there and you're killing it in the PvP world and I'm not that great, is there a chance we're going to get matched up currently in the Hypixel Minecraft world?
So I'm pretty sure there is a type of MMR system, and I've seen it happen because I'll go into Skywars like on my own, and it's pretty chill people. Like, nobody, you can tell when people are like really good, and people are pretty simple for the most part. Like, they're not going aggressive. They're kind of like staying at their base, and then all of a sudden, when I go to stream, turn around and I've got, like a couple people in my party who are, high-ranking Skywars players. All of a sudden, I look across the islands and I see these guys like flying across, like shooting arrows, like they're going nuts. Like, these guys are higher rank. They're speed bridging and like making bridges really fast. I'm like, listen.
A lot of the guys in the chat right now are saying that matchmaking is only in the Skywars ranked mode. Does that sound accurate to you?
As far as I can tell, yeah. Sometimes it happens in Bed Wars, sometimes it happens in other games, but whether that's an MMR system or whether that's just happenstance, luck, I'm not exactly sure. And of course, once you dig down into it and you drill in, I mean, let's talk about other games. Overwatch is a game that I play very often, and people get very frustrated with the ranking system and how the MMR assigns your teams and whatnot. And so I think if Hytale has its own MMR system and has its own ranking, obviously there's one present in Skywars, But once they do, I think we can only cross our fingers. We can only hope that the system that they develop will be fairly accurate. And let's be honest, like any good statistic analysis and like any good study, the more people you have and the higher population you have, the better. So hopefully when we get more players in Hytale and we get people playing, hopefully the more people that are there to play, the better their system is going to be, because they have more data points. They have more numbers to compare you with across the board. And so it's easier to match people up with.
Right. And I think Shale, who's one of the members of our team, is in the chat here. We were covering a game called Spellbreak. Have you ever heard of that game?
Oh, yes.
So we were covering a game called Spellbreak. We had alpha or beta, I don't even know what it was at the time. So we were in that game, and Shale was really frustrated because he kept getting matched up with absolute animals. Like they were just animals, and that is a very challenging game for anybody who doesn't know. Spellbreak is a battle royale, but it's mage based. So so you get these gauntlets and spell based, and you know, you can do combinations of spells. It's a very cool concept, and they have plenty of people that are testing it, but there's still no good system to match people up. And that's my you mentioned having a lot of players, right? So say there's a million players that are playing PvP. Now say 20,000 of those play PvP a day, right? That's a really good number. If I know that there are 20,000 people playing Sky Wars a day, and I'm getting matched up against you, who is, you know, a top tier player, and you just got into the game, I'm going to be really turned off, and that's probably the last time I'm going to play Bed Wars. It's a huge thing that they have to tackle right out of the gate.
Right. And I did play my fair share of Spellbreak, and the interesting thing was that it looked so appealing from the trailers, like all these flashy spells and combos and all this stuff. It's like, oh, it's incredible. And then you actually get into it, and then within 5 minutes you're just crushed because you've got people who've memorized the combos. They know all the movement mechanics as well. And I think there's also, depending on the minigame, and especially with battle royales, there's also a factor of, you might have 100 players on the field, but if the field is too big, then now you've just got, it's 1v1s. It's just a whole bunch of 1v1s. There are some games, I feel like Sky Wars is kind of like that. Bed Wars is kind of like this as well, where it benefits because, especially in Bed Wars, you've got the field that's small enough where somebody who's really, really good can dominate per se, but they also have to keep track of, in Bed Wars, they have to keep track of their home base. And then in Sky Wars, you've got a lot of players like in a pretty tight knit area. And so it could easily become a 2v1 or 3v1. And so being like top tier players, quite tough. But if you have something like, well, Spellbreak was tough just because of the combos, but depending on how you design the game and how you create those player interactions, you could make it so that one player could easily dominate the floor if all they have to worry about is 1v1s versus, you know, low level or whatever level player.
Right. And then going back to the other end of that spectrum, right? I mentioned Star Wars before, the Battlefront. If you haven't played that game recently or have never played the game, so there's a star battle system, right? Where you're flying around, you're with whatever. There's not enough players to manage more than a couple game lobbies at a time. So I will join a game, and depending on what time of the day it is, it's probably going to be the same 100 people. And if I'm playing, I know there's a group in there called Black Squad. If I know there's any Black Squad members in there, I'm literally done. And I'm, you know, I don't think I'm that bad. I mean, you know, it's a great system. They nailed space combat for anybody who's interested in flying spaceships. It's a ton of fun. But just know that on the other end of the spectrum, when you don't have a lot of people invested in, you know, a game mode, you're going to run into different problems. And that's, I think, Battlefront, we talked about not having to reinvent the wheel. Battlefront did this thing where they just shoved so many things in there. I still get confused how many different game modes there are. Like, I'm in there, I'm clicking away. It takes like 9 clicks just to get to where I want to be.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, okay, I could do operations, or I could do assault, or I could do galactic supremacy. I don't effing know. I don't know which one I want to do. And that's part of the problem. So if Hytale comes out and says, okay, we're putting 20 games in here right at launch, we've got one guy managing all of it, or you know, one guy managing every game, or one guy manages 5 games. I don't know. That there's a lot of things that can go wrong, which is why I think we're both, it seems like we're both on the same page, that come out with your staples, slowly roll out things once you know that everything is working the way you want it to work.
And I think to that degree, yes. And I believe a couple months ago, they even kind of had to shave off some of their mini games. I'm pretty sure Hypixel removed a couple of games that just weren't performing that well.
Right.
Partly because there's nobody playing them. And
Right.
it's like, well, they're not going to host the server. They're not going to like host those worlds if nobody's playing. And it's tough because you might get 1 or 2 people who are like waiting in the lobby because it's their favorite minigame ever. But unfortunately, you know, you got to bring the guillotine down. You got to cut it off because there's just nobody playing the game and you're splitting your community. Kind of what we were talking about, spreading people thin earlier.
Right. It's almost more frustrating to sit in a lobby. I think for both parties, it's if I'm sitting in a lobby and I'm waiting, and this happens with the star battles all the time, you know, I'm waiting for 10, 15 minutes. That's not a good experience. And the developer doesn't want you to have that experience. But, you know, you're going to miss, if they cut your game off, you're going to miss your game for what, a couple days, maybe. You'll be like, man, I really wish I had that game again. And then you'll move on to the next thing. Sure. So it's kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. If something like that is happening, they just have to do it because they need to be able to manage all the other games that are thriving.
Consolidating the resources at that point.
Right. All right. So let's dip into something pretty fun. I don't know if you've ever checked out the other streams, but for anybody that's been following our Sunday speculation streams, we have something going on. And I as the PvP expert, we're going to get your hot take on it. All right. Okay. So we are not PvPers. We come from me personally. I come from an MMO background, so I'm very big into adventure mode and the creative world. So I don't remember what stream it was, but all of a sudden we started talking about this land versus sea concept. All right. So I'm going to give you just the basics, just the bare bones. Here we go in the chat. People are going to start going nuts. So land versus sea it comes from the point that I'm terrified to swim. Like in a video game, terrified to swim. So the concept is an attack versus defense mini game where you're either team sea or your team land, right? So the land team gets to build up defenses, and they basically have to stop a wave. You already see it. Look at all these sea dogs. I hate it. I hate it. All these sea dogs that are basically coming in on ships and trying to assault your base and get to almost like Defense of the Ancients. Is it Defense of the Ancients? I can't remember what Ancients of the Strand. I forget what that PvP was in World of Warcraft. Okay. So give me your. There's no rules. There's no concept other than like there's a land team and a sea team. How would you make it work? What would entice you to play this game?
You'd have to. How to play this game?
This is completely hypothetical in the world of make believe because it's not going to happen. But we're still going to talk about it.
Yep. Ooh. I think if you had some, is there any type of ultimate system or like summoning the sea god that you could do or summoning the land god?
Yes, there is, because we talked about this in the last stream. So the land team would have the ability to call in the Kraken after a certain point, and the Kraken would ruin their ships. I don't know how that would affect them. Maybe it would kill the people that were still on some. I don't know how it would work. And then the sea team would be able to call in a dragon, which would, you know, pass over the fortifications and, you know, breathe fire
and things.
Yeah, destroy some things.
Flap,
so
cough,
it's like, think of it like a Helm's Deep style game, but instead of this open battlefield, it's the ocean.
Yep. Ooh, okay. So then I think this will have to be a tiered thing too. Like when you start, we're talking like 30-minute to like hour-long games, right?
Oh,
like
long game.
Yeah. So you've got like kind of like this tier 1. Things start out with like resource collecting, I'm sure, and then kind of tier 2, you can start noticing like maybe some people can spawn in like a familiar, and they've got like a sea familiar with them, and they're kind of approaching the islands or approaching the castle. And then eventually, if we're talking about like the ultimate, we're talking about the Kraken and stuff. That'll be like end tier stuff. You could even have like a UI graph at like the top where Team Land is this close to receiving their Kraken. Team C is this close to receiving their dragon.
I knew asking you would be the right choice because you're doing the voices now. Now you're getting into it. See what I mean? So so what do you think? Do you think it would be like a role system, right? So like I would be a captain of a ship, and I would be able to use some of the weaponry on the ship, or how would it work? Because after a certain point in time, you would think that the sea team would be all on land, so they wouldn't be able to. The sea part wouldn't be a big factor anymore. How would you keep it so that the sea part would still be a big factor throughout the entire game?
Floods. You could have a if as you kind of progress along this tier system, right? You could have maybe mages, or you could have some type of system where suddenly the seas get more tumultuous, or you start to be able to like move the water on land and kind of slowly erode at the land's fortifications. And if you created like swamps or pools where they're spawning, then now who cares if the land is there? You're moving your sea infiltrators into the area.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta hold on while we're still talking. You think about this. I'm looking up. So Lego in the chat here says I gotta look up dwarves versus zombies. Never heard of that one. Have you heard of that one?
No. No.
Let's see. Dwarves versus zombies, the longest game ever. It's an hour.
Oh,
long.
in terms of.
All right, we're just gonna play this. This is gonna go in the background and while we keep talking.
Sure.
I like that idea of like kind of, so if the castle or the fortifications are kind of on a hill, right, or a slope, as the C team progresses, they'd kind of erode, and just kind of the outer edges of the land team would kind of just drift into the sea, and then the sea would rise, right, and that way they would stay relevant the entire time.
You're not giving team land an automatic advantage because the sea can't progress.
Right.
You could even throw storms into this mix, where the storms would create rain that kind of either buffs the C team or it creates the pools that we're talking about.
Right.
And likewise, let's not give all the advantages to Team C here. You could also have it where if Team Land progresses in a certain way, the seas may calm. You may not get as strong of a response, or you can't really lower the sea level. But hey, if we want to be even for both sides, maybe islands start spawning out of the sea so that Team Land can progress closer into Team Land can progress into Team C, with like islands being created so that they can kind of expand their fortifications and move into it. So yeah, there's a lot of potential here.
Yeah, I'm also thinking that again, and we're just speculating for the 44 people that are chilling with us. This is just a wild fantasy of just having fun with this at this point. But so the land team, as they destroy ships or kill players, they would have access to defensive weaponry like ballista or trebuchets, something like that. But there may be something where instead of I mentioned the Kraken, the land team would, instead of islands spawning or something, they may have access to like a Wyvern, right? They can ride in on a Wyvern and kind of force the sea team to have to defend their ships from the sky, as opposed to just shooting the archers that are on the wall or whatever class the player decides to be. Now all of a sudden you have Wyvern swooping in left and right doing these sorts of bombing runs that players are riding on. So now the land team or the sea team is just delayed, right? The whole point is to delay the sea team for 30 minutes or whatever it may be.
And now you've got air, land, and sea, all sorts of battles.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough of land versus sea for today. But as always, in the chat, I have to know, of the 42 people here, you better tell me that you're on Team Land right now. In the chat, what are you, Team Land or Team Sea? And I got to ask you, Matt, what are you right now, Team Land or Team Sea?
You mentioned the dragon being able to be spawned. I don't know. I kind of like Team C because of the water, but
oh jeez, here we go.
Once this game comes out.
I'll tell you, it's just going to become the most fully fleshed out game that never existed ever.
Right. The biggest plans, but nothing ever came about.
It's fine. Shale and I will take care of Team Land. We'll destroy all of you Team C goons, and it'll be fine. Because Shale and I have played our fair share of Defense of the Strand, or whatever the hell it's called. We know how to defend our castle.
You also have a Kraken.
We also have a Kraken. I think we already know there's a Kraken in the game. How cool would it be? Kraken just comes up, pulls down an entire ship,
Yeah, that would be. And see, now the way that you could convince me to pull on a Team Land is the whole island thing that we're talking about. If you could suddenly like spawn islands out of the sea and we start being able to move defenses forward, hey, could go both ways, but I'll stick with Team C for now. I'll stick with it.
Another cool concept. All right, so there's a player class. I don't know what class it is, but they're a very vulnerable class, and they can go behind enemy lines and basically capture or arrest,
like a spy,
like a spy, but basically throw a Team C member in the dungeon. Right, which is another part of the land fortification, and the only way to get them out of the dungeon is for the C team to kind of go behind the island and blow up the dungeon and release all of the prisoners, kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean style.
Yeah, is there also a similar thing for Team C?
I don't know, maybe.
Why
the hell not? Let's do it.
like a dungeon ship.
I don't know. I'm down with it.
Sure, or like an Aquarius, like a base an aqua base with like a dungeon and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And now you've got to and if team, so the way to make this fair then, obviously, like, you're not a big fan of swimming in game, so the way to combat this then is once Team Land progresses so far, the underwater dungeon that is holding all of the land prisoners all of a sudden gets pulled out of the ocean and is suspended on an island. So now you can free the Team Land prisoners that are stuck previously in Team C's dungeon. And now both sides are even.
I love it. This game, I mean, again, the most fleshed out game that will ever exist, that will never actually come into existence.
Yes. Do you have a name for it? Or is it just like Team
No, we have no idea. We just literally every stream, we just kind of add like more ridiculousness to it just to see where it goes.
Yes. Perfect.
I don't know if you're watching the stream. I have no idea what's going on in this game.
Neither do I.
I don't I'm not really, I'm trying to follow it and understand it, but I don't really know what's happening.
I think if there was a trailer for this, it would be a lot more understandable, but I think this is like a live gameplay of a Mega Walls game or like a quest or something like that. And so there's a lot of dialogue going on right now, probably in the background of, hey, this is why the dwarves are fighting the zombies and that kind of stuff. So this might be something that I watch on my own later on, but I don't think we're getting the understanding of what's going on.
If somebody knows the elevator pitch for this game, please let us know, because I don't understand it, but I would like to understand it.
I just see an axe.
I see an axe. I see this like weird belt system. I don't really know what the hell this is. It's like a saw, maybe.
Looks like a sawmill.
Sawmill. Yeah. So there's something here. Somebody in a couple little chat things, let us know what this game is all about. But let's shift back. We have 15 minutes left. Let's shift back. Talk about Hytale again. Any topics that you wanted to talk about?
On Hytale specifically?
Well, I know you had a whole bunch of things you wanted to talk about. With the 15 minutes we have left, is there anything you wanted to dive into in terms of the mini games or Hytale mini games, anything like that?
So I think, well, like I said, I think this discussion has been really helpful because since Hypixel's popularity is really what is going to drive Hytale, I think knowing what we got going in is going to be really important. I think to Hytale's defense, also, and we mentioned this, because they got so much interest, that's the reason this is being delayed, is because they just had so many people, and they're going to need the staff to back this up, or they're going to need to take whatever staff they currently have and help design a system that's going to accommodate so many players. I think also in their defense, I want to just say that Hytale, like these people, this is their passion project. Right. This is not nothing. They're not trying to design the next Fortnite. They're not trying to design the next, record-setting game. Like, Hytale was designed 3 years ago in secret to be the passion project of the people at Hypixel Studios. And so a lot of people are concerned, and they're saying, oh, people, it's going to lose interest. Oh, they're going to lose popularity. It's like, that's not what they care about.
Right.
Hytale doesn't care about that.
And I said this to you before we started, and I've said this in other streams. The only thing they have to do is drop another trailer. That's the only thing they have to do. So they don't have to listen to you. They don't have to listen to me. They don't have to open up a Discord, start a subreddit. They don't have to do any of that. And here is the rare position they are in. They have financial backing from Riot Games, who, as everybody knows, is League of Legends, which they are not struggling for money. They have a culture issue, but that has nothing to do with the Hytale team, who is all remote, doing their own thing, as you mentioned, a passion project. So how rare is it that a relatively small-ish studio can develop their passion project for pretty much as long as they want? I would say it can't go on for 20 years, or Riot may be like, okay, put out a game. But a passion project that has funding, that has the attention of tens of millions of players, and relatively self-imposed stress to put it out, right? There's no external forces that say you need to come out with this game in 2019. If they want to say the game's coming out in 2020, they can, and they won't. There will be very few repercussions for doing that. How rare is that for a company to be in this position?
It is extremely rare, but it's also not completely impossible. Let me give you a good example. Have you heard of Star Citizen?
Shale, I hope you're still in the chat. Yes. We have heard of Star Citizen. Why don't you let everybody know what Star Citizen is?
Okay. Star Citizen is exactly this. It's the passion project that we're talking about, right? With funding from backers.
Here we go. He's
in the chat. Like, oh my gosh! Don't even start. Shane and I are on the same page, man. Like, don't even go, because you could listen, Codiak. If you want to bring me back for another one, we'll talk a whole hour. We'll talk a whole nother. We will bring a whole nother. Yeah. We have a whole nother discussion to talk about Star Citizen. But essentially, in short, it is a game that's been in development for 6 years. It is still in alpha. It's completely backer funded. No funding outside of that. And it is completely based on the donations of backers. It was started on a Kickstarter and still holds the record for the highest paid game Kickstarter thingamabob ever. And it is still going.
And we're talking about millions of dollars.
We're talking millions of dollars. Yeah, we hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And the game itself, because the reason it is taking so long and the reason it's taking so much money is because it is a first-person space simulator to the highest degree of detail possible. Mm-hmm. Like you have a ship that is rendered at 4K that is completely explorable, that has heat systems, electronic systems, blah 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 blah. Anything that you can imagine, hunger systems, like all these things are baked into the game that is supposed to work. That is supposed to coexist in this universe with an economy and jobs and military, and they have created a alien species with its own language, with its own dialects. Like it's obscene, and it's still going. And the problem is feature creep. Feature creep, meaning back when they started it, they said, okay, we have the Kickstarter for this game, but we want to see now. Oh gosh, now I've gone too far.
I'll bring it back to Hytale. Don't worry. You finish your thought.
We got to bring it back to Hytale. Okay. Feature creep has caused it to go out of control. Right. Where they said they were going to release the game after this, but then they kept moving this milestone back and back.
You
moved
the goalpost. You moved the goalpost.
Move the goalpost. Exactly. So that Star Citizen, I'll leave it at there. But
right.
That is to say that.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. That is to say that. Yes, these passion projects are a thing, and it is wonderful from Hytale's perspective to see that like they are getting the response that they get. And let's to bring our discussion closer to home, let's speculate for a second, Codiak, and say that the trailer. You said all they need to do is just drop a trailer. What if they're just preparing a PvP trailer? And
absolutely, they totally could be.
So to get they kind of are developing the game, and they can kind of confidently say that, okay, all we need to do to get our players back on board is dropping a new trailer, probably having a lot more PvP content to it, and then they're all set. I think that's totally a possibility.
Right. And unfortunately with Star Citizen, and just to quickly button that one up,
Sure.
Kickstarter has been a fantastic thing for video games, right?
Absolutely.
One of my favorite games, Darkest Dungeon, was a Kickstarter game.
Yep.
It gives small studios the chance to develop a passion project. Mm-hmm. The problem is us as consumers, if we keep spending money to support a game like Star Citizen, well, then you're basically playing with fire. You're bitching that the game is never coming out, but you're also dropping thousands of dollars.
You're also dropping money into it.
Right. I know Shale's, I think his friends or something have dropped thousands of dollars in a game that is not even in beta. And there is a consumer element, and I will always be an advocate for this. I'm not totally against pre-ordering games, but I am against, putting thousands of dollars into a game that is not even out yet. Like, and this has been the trouble with early access games. There have been early access games that have been fantastic, like Risk of Rain 2, a more recent early access game. Fantastic. It's a fully fleshed out game. They're just going to keep adding to it, and they're not being deceptive, and they're not being predatory in their practices. And just talking with Noxie for the hour that I did, and a little bit with Chris, who's their marketing guy, I know that these guys are truly passionate about this, and they do want what's best for the fans. So when a Hytale beta eventually comes out, they're not going to be asking us for money. They're not going to be saying, okay, you can buy this and support us for $100. It's a new... And this conversation has gone in a crazy direction, but that's fine. That's what Sundays are all about. That's what Sundays are all about. But they have all sorts. Shale, if you're still in the chat, what's the Pantheon where they're asking for these founders bundles for like $700 for a game that's not out? That is a predatory practice that games like Hytale.
There's no reason that you should spend 3 digits at all.
No.
3 digits, never.
If you want to spend $5 or $10 to support the developers, and they'll give you a founder's title or something, that's fine. But when you're talking hundreds of dollars, but to bring it back to what we were talking about, Hytale's not in that position.
No,
they have financial backing to work on their passion project from one of the biggest developers of the modern era. You know, and that's a rare position to be in.
Yep. And they don't have to worry. They don't have to worry about consumers providing this backing because it's coming from Riot.
Right. And just to test you here, what happens when you run out of money for a developer? What happens when you start to run out of money?
Well, you've either got to push the development of the game, which means that things get rushed and things don't get finished like you wanted them to. And so you might end up with this really pretty game, but it has fundamental flaws to it because you needed to rush and push the release time.
Yep.
Or you've got errors that come in with hot fixes, fixing these like crazy patches. So we've seen the detriment of not being able to release a game on time because of funding or whatever it might be.
Right. And that's
think Hytale's in that
where
position.
No, and that's why it's so brilliant that these guys can take all the time in the world. Well, not all the time in the world, but a lot of time because they're not under those pressures, right? There's nobody that's saying, okay, you've got 2 months of money left, develop a game. It better be out by the end of 2 months. They're not in that position, and they're smart. Whether or not you agree with it, they're smart by not having the distractions of a Discord or a Reddit, right? Because they're active on Twitter, their own individual Twitters. They were doing the blog post thing, and they still felt like that was too distracting for them. Yeah. So there's obviously a pressure on them, but it seems like it's self-inflicted.
Yeah, for them, we don't know. To that point, we don't know. This is actually the first time I've even thought about the interaction between Riot and Hytale. I don't think there's any pressure. I don't think there's any pressure from that end, as far as I know. But hey, you never know what's behind the scenes. I always felt like if Hytale ever said that, hey, we can't release X, whether it's a blog post or details or whatever, I always felt like it was self-done, like it was from the studio themselves saying, listen, we want to make sure that our focus and that our efforts are being put into releasing the game as soon as possible. I had a question mark when I saw that they weren't doing any more Friday blog posts, because I felt like
it's not that much to ask, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah,
it's not that much to ask.
Right, they're still doing like the Hytale art, the fan art part of it, which I mean, and maybe it's because I don't know. They've made the decision, and we're okay with that.
Right, and again, they don't need to do much to get people back. But if they, but and this is how I wrapped up my conversation last week too. For anybody that thinks the game is coming out this summer, it's not. There's no beta coming this summer because the team wouldn't have pulled back all of their marketing if they were close to production. And that's just a reality we have to start facing. I mean, a fall beta is a possibility, I suppose, but with very little, I mean, look, they released a Timon and Pumbaa thing yesterday. I almost to God think they're trolling us. Like I don't even know it's just not in my personal opinion as a marketing person, it's not the best marketing play, but then again, they've already proven they don't really need to do that well because they have a wildly successful trailer. Yep. So that they've struck lightning, and it's only a matter they have to calculate in their heads how long that lightning strike is going to propel them forward.
Right. And I think if we have this last couple minutes to kind of talk about Hytale, no bars held, I also want to mention that the beauty of Hytale is not just that it is his standalone. It's not just a standalone game on its own. It is a game that is going to spawn other games.
It's a
because of those tools, because of the ability to open up the server code to create whatever game code you want, to be able to have a Hytale model maker to create your own models and textures and everything. Like, the beauty of this is that yes, it's going to take a while, but the games and the things that are going to spawn from it are so fundamentally important to the legacy of this game. It's going to be a while, but it's going to be worth the wait.
Absolutely. And that's a great note to end on. Matt from Aderan Gaming. Matt, what are your plans for Hytale? Are you still working on a secret-ish project behind the scenes?
Secret-ish, kind of secret-ish. It is. I think it's a project that's going to be kind of coming out. It's going to start in Minecraft. It's going to transition over to Hytale, but that's like totally on my side of things. I haven't even mentioned anything like that. So it is going to carry over. As far as like my general plans for as we head in, the reason that I'm doing Minecraft so much on my channel right now is mainly because of Hytale. And as my community is kind of building, the majority of my community that's here with Minecraft is going to be here for Hytale as well. Some people have asked me, are you going to do both? To them, I say, we'll see how it goes, because who knows? You know, the people who are only interested in Minecraft now, they might be totally sold over to Hytale, or maybe some people won't be as interested. We'll see. But I'm going to try and keep up both, playing with my community. And it's kind of hard to make speculation right now because they've cut off the blog posts.
Right.
There's only so much that you can talk about Hytale with that little information. But if we get some more stuff, especially with the PvP side of things, like we've done now, I might be talking about Hytale more as we get some more info. But otherwise, I'm just excited for the game and to see kind of the projects that are being spawned. I'm in touch with a couple of different people with the mods and the mini games that they're making in preparation for Hytale, even before we've even got a release date. So I'm in touch with them as well. So we'll see how things go.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, Aderan Gaming, follow him, subscribe to his channel. They're doing some awesome stuff. If you're into PvP, if you're into the streaming world, he kills it on the stream every time he streams. And as always, guys, thank you for joining me on Sunday. I know you guys have a lot going on, so we really appreciate you spending some time with us. We'll be back next week. Not sure what time, but we'll be at the same place, same location. And Matt, you get the last word. What do you want to say?
Right on. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on a Sunday, and we'll see you for more speculation later.
Later.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. Team Land.